Welcome to our Zoom meeting, our digital discussion for this month. My name is Holly, and I'm personally interested in this topic. It is about the Amish and the Amish-Mennonites of Pinecraft in Sarasota, Florida. Amish and Mennonites have been a great interest of mine for many years. I'll just tell you a little bit about that. And I've visited Lancaster, Pennsylvania many times, but when I moved to Florida almost 16 years ago, I discovered that there was an Amish and Mennonite community here, which I hadn't been aware of. Though if I had read some of my Amish books in depth, I might have found a little paragraph here or there. But otherwise, there's not a lot about them out there, even in all the books that I have on the Amish and Mennonites. So let me give you a little background here. This is a book I read as a young girl, and it is known as Plain Girl. And it was written when the Amish were forced to go to public schools back in the 1950s and 60s. They had to go to public schools. In fact, they even had to go to high school. Now that has changed now. They have their own private schools, typically a one-room schoolhouse where they go to the 8th grade. And the law changed. There was a Supreme Court case and you no longer have to go. They no longer have to go to high school. They don't have to have that post-secondary education as Amish. Now, many Mennonites do that. And there is a difference between the Amish and the Mennonites, and I will tell you about that. And by the way, the background that I'm in front of here is in Pinecraft, Sarasota, when the buses come down, because they bring bus full of Amish snowbirds from other places. And I'll tell you a little more about that later. But anyways, as a young child, when I read this book, it intrigued me, and it had some questions about the Amish being exposed to the world, perhaps in a time when they were even more separated from the world than they are today. And that book you can still find some places. It's a really interesting story. And I just wanted to mention some things about the Amish, like they don't believe in making graven images. So there's a little picture of my granddaughter back there or over here. And you would not find that today. In Amish households, they wouldn't have pictures because they considered them graven images. So Mennonites would. I'm not sure about the New Order Amish, but the typical Old Order Amish, not. And this is just, I do collect Amish dolls. And this one here was my first one from 1988. And this one I wanted you to see because it's my most recent one. And I bought it in Sarasota. It's from somebody that made it in Ohio, and she signed it. And this little tag on here will say, inside when you open it, it mentions about not making a graven image. So that's why a lot of the Amish dolls do not have faces. That's why they don't have pictures in their homes as well. Let me give you a little background about the Amish and Mennonites, and then I can let you get into the Amish and Mennonites of Sarasota, Florida. The European Anabaptist movement began in 1525 as a radical wing of the Protestant Reformation. And that's back when the Catholics and Protestants were separated. And Anabaptists differed from other groups because they practiced adult baptism, which went against the belief of the Catholics and even other Protestants at the time. And they insisted on a free church, separate from state interference. And of course, as Americans today, we are very aware of the separation in church and state, but that didn't happen back then. In 1536, a young Catholic priest from Holland named Menno Simons joined the Anabaptist movement, and his writings and leadership united many of the Anabaptist groups who later became known as Mennonites. In 1693, a Swiss bishop named Jacob Ammon broke away from the Mennonite church. His followers were called the Amish, and they are much more conservative in their beliefs. Although the two groups have split several times, the Amish and the Mennonites share the same beliefs concerning baptism, which means they believe in adult baptism, not in infant baptism, non-resistance, non-violence, and the basic biblical doctrines. Civil and religious authorities were threatened by the rapid spread of Anabaptist groups because realize church and state were the same thing then. I know it's unbelievable to me today to think what was happening then. Over the next several decades, nearly 2,500 Anabaptists were burned at the stake, drowned in rivers, starved in prisons, or beheaded. And I do believe they have a book about that. And the harsh persecution pushed many Anabaptists underground and in rural hideaways. And this picture is of a gentleman named Dirk Wilhelm, who had escaped from prison by, I think, tying rags or cloths together and lowered himself down. He made his way across the ice that was almost ready to break, and he made it safely, but his jailer fell in and he was going to drown. So Dirk Wilhelm saved him. And this jailer would have let him not be punished for that, but others insisted, and he was burned alive. And it was horrific what happened to that man. And this is a Mennonites, because you can notice from their clothing here, they have prints. I'll talk a little more about this. To avoid persecution, many fled to the mountains of Switzerland and southern Germany, and that's where the Amish tradition of farming and holding their worship services in homes rather than churches began. Many Amish and Mennonites accepted William Penn's offer of religious freedom, and they settled in what became known as Pennsylvania. The first sizable group of Amish arrived in Lancaster County in the 20s or 30s, and as of 2018, that's the most recent I could get figures for. The Amish can be found in 31 states, 4 Canadian provinces, and Argentina and Bolivia. So they have spread. For a long time, it was just the US and then the US and Canada. And recently, they have some small groups in those South American countries. In addition to the Amish and Mennonites, there are other Anabaptist groups, including Brethren in Christ, Brethren groups that started in Schwarzenau, Germany, and Hutterites. There's 4 main groups of Amish: the Old Order, which is the ones that you're most familiar with, that have horse and buggy and very little technology; the New Order Amish, the Beachy Amish, and the Amish Mennonites. And there's many subgroups and different rules within those categories. For example, the Beachy Amish and the Amish Mennonites often drive cars and use electricity, while others use horse-drawn buggies, except if you're in Sarasota. There are 3 main groups of Mennonites: Conference Mennonites, Conservative Mennonites, and Old Order Mennonites, with many groups in each category. In general, Mennonites are more assimilated into mainstream culture. And there's some more Mennonites here. You can see that while they're dressing conservatively, they don't have solid colors like the Amish. The gentlemen don't have beards. Of course, the Amish men don't get beards until they marry. But the Amish and the Mennonites have similar beliefs when it comes to their Christian doctrine. Both have a belief in living their faith, Christian faith, for all to see. And the main difference is outwardly, like in a manner or style of dress, use of technology. Amish typically stay away from technology. They use it in very small amounts, very selectively, and they maintain a plainer, more conservative style of dress. Mennonites are more varied than the Amish, with some accepting little technology and dressing as plainly as the Amish. There's all types of Mennonites. Some will be very different to spot the differences between us. Other Mennonites freely utilize modern technology and dress no differently than most people, and most are somewhere in the middle. And I just took a couple of pictures, and you probably can tell I took them from my car. These are some Amish gathering here. I think they are making like little storage buildings. There's Amish going down the road, and this is in Lancaster County, PA. I did not take any pictures of their faces. They won't expose, they don't like as adults to have their faces photographed, certainly. But it's very strange because you can be in parts of Lancaster that are very more suburban, and then you can drive out into the country and hardly see any at all. And this is just some pictures that I took: an Amish farm, an Amish school. Frequently they might not have cell phones unless they're a New Order or Amish or Mennonite, but they might have a phone booth at the end of the road for group use. The Pinecraft Community, how did that come about? Well, it was a group of Amish men who went hunting and fishing, and they discovered how wonderful the climate in Florida was. And they returned to Ohio praising the climate, the fishing, the oranges, and the job prospects. And they come back, they end up in Tampa, then Venice, but the farming wasn't what they hoped in the sandy soil of Florida. So near Sarasota, near this area where they would settle called Pinecraft, excuse me, there was a newly drained area of 8,000 acres near Fruitville that looked more promising. And the neighborhood that would become Pinecraft was platted as the Sarasota National Tourist Camp. It was laid out in 1925, included 454 lots. Get the size of this, that measured 40 by 40 feet. And today I believe there's about 500 homes there. Each early family bought 30 acres of muck land. It wasn't the sandy soil drained land that was now near Fruitville Road and Interstate 75. And it went into the celery business. And by the way, for the Amish, the celery business is a big deal because they plant them before weddings. They'll serve creamed celery at an Amish wedding. In fact, if you see somebody growing a lot of celery, that means someone in the family is probably getting married. And they grew lettuce and other vegetables. The winter growing season in Florida worked with the summer farming season in Ohio, Indiana, and Pennsylvania, the home states of many of the Pinecraft family. By 1948, there were more than 250 cottages that have been built, and some of which are still there today. The community also had a school, the Fruitville School, which doubled as worship space for separate Mennonite and Amish services, and a post office and a number of other businesses. And realize this is a really small area compared to how they spread out in Lancaster County, Holmes County, PA, Indiana, many other places as well. And this is a picture in Sarasota, Pinecraft, and you're going to say, well, their faces are showing. Well, I can't be sure. Perhaps, most likely they're Mennonites with somewhat of a plain style of dress, or they could be New Order Amish, and someone else, not me, took this picture. So I can't be quite sure, but you can see them here, and they're on their tricycles. They can rent those tricycles. Some people own them. Occasionally you'll see a bicycle as well. The community is unique in Pinecraft for a number of reasons. The community's transient nature, with the majority of residents being seasonal visitors, the use of electricity, as well as different forms of transportation other than buggies, holding church services in a different building in a home, a practice that's partially due to constraints in Pinecraft as well, and is another difference from the Amish of other areas. For the Amish, Pinecraft is more of a vacation destination. However, they do have a number of year-round residents, particularly retirees. Their presence through the summer months means Florida maintains a permanent year-round Amish population, though one that changes in size during the season. And some of the people come back and forth. It is really hard to get figures on year-round Amish. The latest I have, it says 100, but that doesn't include Mennonites, and I think they're grossly underestimating. There may be snowbirds that are there for several months, people that come for a week or two. And this is a typical mode of transportation, though you know that most old order Amish will use horse and buggy. This is how they get around Pinecraft. It's a small area, and where Sarasota has made adaptations for the size of the lots and how businesses and things are run for the Amish, it would not permit, that area would not permit horse and buggy. Until 2016, this was the only Amish-run post office in America. Pinecraft, Florida, and you can see all the notices on the outside of the building. When I moved here the first time we went up there, it was a post office. I was really sad to hear it no longer is. The small building at 2040 Yoder Avenue, which was owned by Abe and William Knapp from 2004 to 2016. And prior to that had been the property of the community of Pinecraft and was purchased in the 1980s through donations and Amish bake sales. There had been some sort of post office in Pinecraft since at least 1940. The Nepps had, and when it was turned over to the Nepps, who are also Amish or Mennonites, I'm not quite sure, I think they were Mennonites, had a contract with the Postal Service to provide service to the area. They received federal minimum age to run it and had a tip jar on the front counter. That's the only post office, I believe, that did that. There were no computers inside, and prices were posted on handwritten charts. And when the Nepps, what happened was the Nepps died, and then the post office service decided to close it down. And so there is no longer separate post office, which I think is, was very quaint. And you can see actually the phone booth outside there. Today it's a cafe, the Postal 98 Cafe. It's 540 square feet. Well, why are all those buses and why is it important? Because that is how many of the people that don't live year round, come down to Pinecraft in Sarasota. Typical old order Amish do not drive cars. And for some others, maybe new order, and maybe even some Mennonites, it's just simpler to come by bus, which typically takes about 20 hours. And there are buses that come from the Lancaster area. And I think the largest area they get them from is Ohio, though there's also buses from Ohio/Indiana. And so there will be typically about 50 people on a bus, and there are numerous buses, sometimes multiple buses that come in a day, and it takes typically depending on where you're coming from, about 20 hours, which sounds like a very long bus ride to me. But this is not, cars would be technology that they would not have if they're old order Amish, but they are allowed to hire someone to drive them, so they are allowed to come down by bus. And realize there's all types of Amish that come here. And the other thing I want to mention is they could be old order Amish, and there are even divisions of old order Amish that are stricter, and maybe they only have, there's the one strap Amish, Schwarzen Trooper Amish, ones with yellow buggy tops, some that are super conservative that don't even have indoor plumbing. So there's a variety of different types of Amish that come here. And even the old order probably aren't quite as strict, some of them, because they have church districts with about 20 to 40 families. Their bishop oversees that. And maybe they fellowship with some other old order Amish, but each is ruled by their own, led by their own bishop. So a bus here arriving from Ohio and Indiana, and you can see the different types of dress wear. People coming to greet the bus, I'm going to say that these are most likely Mennonites, perhaps another Mennonite or a New Order Amish, I can't quite be sure. And there are tricycles, as I said, that can be leased. Sometimes people own them. They are coming for a vacation. The Tourist Church was purchased by the Mennonites in 1946 for $7,500. And at one point, this was used by both Amish and Mennonites in separate services. Currently, the Amish have a separate church located on Hines Avenue, known as the Pinecraft Amish Church, and the Pine Grove Mennonite Church can be found on Beneva Road, and there's more churches for Mennonites in the area. And what's unusual is that you do not typically have Amish going to church. They worship in their homes or their barn, and they will have the Amish end up having that church service about once a year. They sit on benches. It's several hours long. This is quite a different adaptation. These homes, I told you the size of them, there's no way they could fit a church service in there. Now, not all Amish bishops approve of their people coming down here in the winter, though most of them come for the weather, but they feel like it's a more liberal area and it's easier to be drawn away from the church, the Amish faith. So some, I don't know if they are given the strong suggestion to not come, because if you're a member of the Amish church, then you need to go by what they say. And to become a member of an Amish church, you need to be baptized into the Amish faith as an adult. Now, before that, if you don't become a member, You are not bound by their rules. Of course, they want you to come, but about 85% of Amish youth do join the church. But if you join the church and you are baptized and then decide to leave, it can become sticky because you can be put under the ban or you could be shunned. That means you can't eat with your family or maybe fellowship, depending on your bishop and the district, if that would ever happen again. Of course, if you repent from turning your back on the Amish faith, and they are a Christian group, they are not a cult, but they do have that serious commitment once you become a member of the old Amish church. Now, if you leave before then, that sometimes happens. People may become New Order Amish. They may become Mennonites as well. So some of them stay plain, though not as strict as the old Order Amish. Just some of the things that the Amish typically engage in that are not seen in other places, as you probably can imagine. So here they are doing shuffleboard in a nearby park. And they don't necessarily ever play shuffleboard that I've ever read up in Lancaster, Ohio, or any place else. That is not typically an Amish hobby, though I'm going to again say maybe some Mennonites here or New Order Amish, plain clothing, but a trim beard. Older Amish men, once they're married, don't trim their beard. And you can see these. And Mennonites, those can have people that dress plain as people that dress like you and I do as well. Many different branches, many different divisions. This is something I've never seen an Amish do too. Not that I go to Amish homes and hang out with them, but I have studied them from a number of years. And here is a golf cart in the Pinecraft community here. And it is a really small area. I tried to look to see how big it is. And the most I got was like a half a square mile of Pinecraft. I think it's a little bigger than that, but I couldn't swear to it. But there they are, something you wouldn't see. You wouldn't typically see Amish women in flip-flops. And again, I'm not sure if they're Mennonites or they're old order Amish or new order Amish from here, though they certainly have a solid color. So that would lead me to believe perhaps old or new order Amish. And I really don't know how many of the old order Amish come here. We have had guests, we've had Mennonites, New Order, and we've had old order Amish visitors on our visit us here at Edison Ford because I have asked them before. This is a nearby park in the Pinecraft area. It's about 1 mile away. It has a recreation area. That's where they're going to play shuffleboard. And again, you can see a variety of different types of dress here. And they just don't play shuffleboard. They do other things. I showed you a picture. They go to the beach. And why do they come down here? Well, if you've ever lived up north, you know that the winters can be harsh and they want a break just like everyone else. And typically it's the retirees, but families might come down here for a week or two, but the snowbirds most likely are the retirees. There are some families with younger children that live there as well. And here they are playing bocce, excuse me, and then plain dress, but this looks to be like a group of more conservative Mennonite women because they have the print dresses here. And there they are. This looks to be either it's in that park or it's beach because they are playing beach volleyball. And their faces aren't showing here, but there's a number of different types of dressing. The Amish typically wear solid colors, sometimes pinafore. They wear caps, they have bonnets, though I guess there are some that wear scarves. And you can tell so much. I don't know enough to know by what they're wearing, which, where they're from. I can't see the front of their outfits, though Amish do sometimes wear bright colors. When I visit the Lancaster area, you can definitely go out into communities and see some turquoise, some purples, things like that. Also darker colors as well. And Here they are at the beach. Some people go to Pinecraft. A few actually stay in the Siesta Key area of Sarasota as well. And this is most likely outside of Big Olaf's. It's an ice cream place nearby within a mile of Pinecraft. And somebody that's Amish or Mennonite back in the store there. There's some here as well. And there used to be one down not far from us where all the outlets are down in the Estero Bonita area. And they used to have a big Olaf's ice cream, and they used to have the plastic, the pretend horse and buggy out there. And that is popular among the Amish, that they spend quite a bit of time there as well. Amish, Mennonites, Anabaptists. This is some ladies that are biking on the trikes, the three-wheelers. And this, I haven't been to Yoder's lately, so I don't know if they still have this mural of Amish life here, and it doesn't. And there it is outside of Yoder's. Yoder's is a restaurant that is very popular with people, Mennonites and Amish alike. And it's not a huge restaurant inside, but they have like a produce store, a meat store, and then there's a little tiny Amish gift shop, but it's it's just affiliated with Yoder's. They used to have a few Amish things. I think they still do, but it's not all Amish, and it's quite small, but they have a whole area there, and people will frequently bike there from Pinecraft. I mean, it's really considered part of the neighborhood, just a little ways down the road. Some more not typical styles of dress among the Amish women wearing the sandals, flip-flops. Though when I go to Lancaster, you frequently see Amish women wearing now sneakers, what people call tennis shoes there. And here they are engaging in a chess game here. Again, a trimmed beard. So I think they're maybe New Order Amish. Could be Mennonites. It could be what I'm not quite sure of, but it could be some Old Order Amish, though they typically don't trim their beards. The heart of the Pinecraft neighborhood is known as Bahia Vista, a 4-lane road bisecting the community and serving as one of Sarasota's main east-west artery. The Pinecraft Amish community is unique in a number of ways. And I've talked about this some, but one is the mix of people in the community. It's made up of a wide variety of Amish with roots in different settlements. And remember, from district to district with a different bishop, even if they're Old Order Amish, there can be some subtle differences. This fact becomes obvious in the different styles of clothing worn by the Pinecraft Amish, and that's why I'm showing you this picture again. However, Pinecraft visits are not accepted by all Old Order Amish. Some Amish see the Florida community as worldly. Well, we wouldn't see it as worldly in the pursuits, I think, that they pursue, though, going to the beach, perhaps. Some may even wear bathing suits, but typically they wear a modest, like swim dress. But part of the problem some Amish have with Florida is the lifestyle led by Amish residents and visitors to Pinecraft, which most people would consider rather conservative, but they would not, because there is electricity. And Old Order Amish, that's one thing I know, do not use electricity. Now they use some batteries and selectively for different things, perhaps if they're running a business or powering woodworking tools or things like that, because not all Amish now, even in the more rural areas, are farmers. There's just not enough land. It's a difficult way to make a living. They might have a woodworking shop. They might work in a store or something like that. But Amish and Pinecraft do not use horse and buggies, as you could see, and Old Order Amish, They all do that, and they all don't use electricity, though I think that maybe we could say that they could use some form of a storage battery that Thomas Edison certainly invented. I put these two places here. This is Yoder's. I showed it to you before, and I told you how they expanded, and they call it Amish Village here. And you can see it really is not a big restaurant, but they've added on all those other places. You will see it line out the door in a typical season, and it's not very big. They have tons of pies and they get a lot of Amish and Mennonite visitors. Here's the other place here, Der Dutchman. That was Der Dutchman. It was a lot smaller. Then it became Troya's Dutch Heritage and went back to Der Dutchman. And it's been added on to. They have food to go. It is huge, where this is more cozy. They sell baked goods downstairs, and upstairs they have a gift shop that would have a very few Amish things, but mostly just a nice gift shop that's affiliated with the restaurant. And this is part of a chain. They have a few in like Ohio, where typically the Amish come from. And just recently, I forgot to add the picture behind there. There is a hotel that sometimes some Plain people will stay at briefly. It doesn't have a bar or anything like that. And it's right behind Der Dutchman. And yes, we do see some Amish and a lot of Mennonites that work there, and some will come here as well, though I have to say Yoder's most likely would get more visitors. And Der Dutchman has this large buffet with a lot of what people might call old Amish home style cooking as well. But it's a fun place to visit if you're going to Sarasota, and you can stop by. And they do sell not a lot of Amish things, but like my doll that I have as part of, have about 15 or 20 of them, because remember, they don't want to make a graven image, which is what photographs and faces on dolls would do. This is how I found more information about the Old Order Amish. Or the Amish in general. She is a Beachy Amish. And I read an article in a magazine called Guy's Post, which is a magazine founded by Norman Vincent Peale, Magazine for Positive Living, talks about all different types of people and their faith, typically Protestant, Catholic, Jewish, Amish, but others as well. And I learned about this woman called Sherry Gore. And she did something very unusual. That's her sitting here. And she's dressed quite plain. And you can see that's her book here. It's called The Plain Choice. And it says choosing to live an Amish life. But she's actually a Beachy Amish. And she was not born into the Amish faith. I don't think it's easy to become Amish or Amish Mennonite if you are not brought up that way, though it's certainly possible. And Sherry was not. And she became part of the Beachy Amish, which today we might consider closer to being a Mennonite. They allow electricity like they do in Pinecraft. And she actually lived in Pinecraft for a long time, but you can see she's dressed plain. But she is not Amish. She is, well, Beachy Amish, which allows for cars, though Sherry would frequently ride her bike. It allows for electricity. And I read an article about that, her and her life in Pinecraft. And To the Day Show went there because she loves to cook. And she lived there year round, renting a home. And they did a episode with her about cooking, the life that she lives in Pinecraft there as a Beachy Amish, which I said is more of the Amish. It's more on the liberal scale, but certainly totally different lifestyle, a plain lifestyle. And then she came out, she had handmade a cookbook, one that was locally published. And then she came out with this one with her recipes, Simply Delicious Amish Cooking. And then she told her story about how to live an Amish life. And I've really followed her and became interested in her because she also had a daughter that was diagnosed with an illness that was certainly two different illnesses that proved life-threatening, and she did pass away. She could no longer eat or anything. It was a very difficult time for Sherry. The Amish and the Mennonite community of Pinecraft certainly stepped up, but one of her daughters had moved to Canada, and when this daughter died, she eventually will move up to the Lancaster area couple years ago and start a new life. But I recommend her book. There's lots of anecdotes. There's a book about her life and the change to a plain lifestyle, and a person that wasn't brought up in that belief system or culture, but still embraces it today. So she lives in the Lancaster area where there's a lot of Anabaptists of all different types of backgrounds as well. Now, if you want to know the nitty-gritty history of Pinecraft, this gentleman was in his 90s, and I think he came down here from Ohio. And he writes a history of the Pinecraft area, and it's published by Carlisle Books, which I think might be something that used to be affiliated with Der Dutchman and perhaps the gift store. And he told their founding and all the different people that came and went and all the different buildings. As I think I told you, I have a lot of books about Amish life, but very few. I've actually only found 2 mentions of them in my book. So this doesn't tell as much as I would like about their life today, because it only goes to 1960. And you cannot find this anywhere. You probably can get it if you have a library card. They can get it on interlibrary loan from another library. It's not in print. I did get a copy, but it stops at 1960. And I'd like to know more about and it's a great help. But if I was writing a book about it, which I don't live there, so I wish that somebody would, because I would like to know about the mix of Amish culture there, if they're old order Amish, how they reconcile the electricity, the lack of horse and buggies there. Are they ever forbidden by their bishops? New Order Amish, Beachy Amish, Amish Mennonites, all the different varieties of Mennonites. There's just so much more I want to go. What happens from 1960 till now? It's 51 years later. Anyway, I was very fortunate to have that came back into the store, and I was able to buy a copy. And that's really the only story because it's completely about Pinecraft that I found, though as I said, I wish there was more. I thought you would find this interesting. In fact, Sherry Gore, and I didn't grab my copy of that, and somebody else wrote a couple of books about that area. This is one of the typical books that Beverly Lewis started by writing Amish, which are typically Amish romances, and then like 8,553 other authors have come out with them. That doesn't mean that necessarily everyone thinks that they should be writing these, particularly the Amish, though there is an author called, I think Beverly Lewis knew some Amish. There's an author called Wanda Brunstetter who actually has some Amish Mennonite friends or Mennonite friends as well that writes these type of books, but there's a lot of them today. And this lady has written maybe 4, but several books along that style about people, Palm Grove. This is actually in Sarasota. So those books, Amish books, those Amish romance books, there's actually some about Sarasota, but yet not a good book about the people that live there or an overall history that's available for everyone, because this was in limited distribution as well. And now it's completely out of print. It wasn't published by a major publisher. But I'm thankful that they had it. So today, the Pinecraft district is located at the intersection of Beneva Road and Bahia Vista Street, and it's an area largely populated by the Amish and Mennonite communities. And I read this article about somebody in there that's doing some work on some homes. This gentleman, he owns Sandollar Homes and Construction. He actually goes there on his bike, and he's managing. So he is, which is what a lot of them do, because there's not a lot of parking space there. And some of them probably don't drive because they're old order Amish, though some of the Mennonites or New Order certainly could. But he arrives by bike, and he was doing 12 new homes and 2 extensive home remodels. The plan for the Pinecraft area, the Pinecraft Neighborhood Overlay District that went into effect in March of 2018, laid the groundwork for more building activity. Miller says it allows property owners to maximize its lots by changing the setback requirements and the lot coverage percentage allowed, which means the home can take up more of the lot. And I already told you it was 40 by 40. These are pretty modestly sized homes, and he focuses on 800 square foot homes. The maximum allowed on a 40 by 40 foot lot. Although modestly sized, prices in Pinecraft aren't low. If people that invest in this built 800-foot homes that have sold them, that he built for, sold them for $270,000 to $295,000. That puts the price per square foot at about $340 to $370. By contrast, the Realtor Association of Sarasota and Manatee counties says that an average price per square foot of the residential homes in Sarasota, Florida was $200 per square foot in 2020. Miller also has built homes in somewhat larger lots, creating a space for a garage, the second story, and those go for about $550. And remember, some of these are rented out seasonally, some are rented out year round, some are owned, some are being redone. And the Sarasota area, it really would be, I think, because they are a community that I don't think is in Sarasota proper, but it's built up around it. And they are part of Sarasota County, and they've made accommodations for even a few Amish or Amish-Mennonite businesses there, things that take place in their area as far as size as well, that what happened, what is in Pinecraft. Back a ways when I was showing you a picture talking about the early years of being settled, that was actually an Amish and Amish-Mennonite grocery store. I happened to forget to mention that. That came from that book. So I wanted you to know that that's what that was. The reason I put this picture here is because you can see some of the homes behind you. And if you drive through that area, you can see that the homes are mostly very simple and plain. That kind of wraps this up. These are some of the sources I used. Amish America is a good one. It focuses on Florida, businesses, Yoder's Restaurant. There's a great book, a source about the Amish. There's a place called the Young Center for Anabaptist and Pietist Studies at Elizabethtown College. There's an Amish and Mennonite Bureau in the Lancaster area, most of the communities that have large Amish populations. Amish Society, the history of Pinecraft, Mennonite life, our Pinecraft life, which is a woman that lives there that had left the Amish faith, but she makes up these little booklets and she will take pictures and sell them. They're self-published, but they're quite interesting with pictures of the Amish and Mennonites. Her name is Katie Troyer. The woman that I was talking about, that there's books about, that has written some books, her name is Sherry Gore, if you're interested in finding more about that. There's that guidepost article. There's a lot there. I'm gonna just go on a little bit more, but there is so much information. I have 30 or 40 books about the Amish and the Mennonites, because they always start about their common shared faith and where they started from. So there's still a lot more information, and you can't give one sweeping answer for any questions about them. I just want to talk about next month, and then if you don't have any questions, I'll go on, and will just say this. If you have questions and you don't want to ask them now, go on to email me at hshaffer@edisonford.org. And if you have something that's relates to Edison, Ford, Florida, the history, something like that, and you have a suggestion for the future, I certainly would take it under advisement. I think, we've all gone through a pandemic. So if you ever are so inclined to want to make a donation to Edison Ford, 2350 McGregor Boulevard, Fort Myers, Florida, 33901. But if there's interest, I will continue these once a month for a while if you're enjoying these. And next month, it's going to be in 3 weeks. So join the digital discussion next month. General Winfield Scott Hancock and Elmira Hancock, and they are here, what was then known as the Third Seminole War. And she writes about her memories of here. And General Winfield Scott Hancock is going to go on to become a very well-known Civil War general known as Hancock the Superb. somebody I greatly admire. I like how she writes about Fort Myers. That's here, and I think you won't want to miss it. I'm going to stop my share right now on the screen. And I think that there might be some questions, so let me look. Thanks. Is there any estimate of the Amish and Mennonite population in the US? And thank you for joining me, by the way. Yes, there is an estimate. We know that the United States, and I'll just say, yeah, about 300,000. Mennonites, I don't know, there's a lot more. I only know the Amish/Mennonite population worldwide, which is about 22,100,000 people, but it could be updated to, even more, but I don't know the US population. Let's see what was on the chat. Oh, these are wonderful. Thank you. Oh, thank you, people, for your feedback. I appreciate it. Any other questions? It doesn't seem like there are. So I think I answered them. My only question was from Dan Cornel. And do Amish medicine believe in modern medicine, such as the COVID shot? That is a really interesting question. And again, it varies by district to district, depending on if they're old order, new order, what their bishop thinks of that. I will tell you that in Sarasota, there was a higher rate of COVID than the Pinecraft area. There was a higher rate of COVID than in any other area. So probably not as much, though some do have embraced modern medicine. Some do not. Some did not get the shot, so it was a higher rate. They do, like home births, particularly up in Lancaster and Ohio, Indiana, and they might have a midwife come, but some do go to traditional doctors. There are some illnesses or genetic disorders that belong more to the Amish, or not because they were that close to relatives, but because, they are limited to that particular group of people. They may, there's some genetic issues that need to be followed by doctors. So some definitely do that, but there is really not a one size fits all answer for everyone. If you, and thank you for your feedback when you say you enjoy these, it means a lot. Probably doesn't look like it, but it takes a lot of hours. And I'm always nervous because love talking, love the PowerPoint part, but then I'm always waiting for something to happen with Zoom. So I appreciate your patience with me through my learning curve. But I wish you, if you enjoy these, please pass this along to other people and get them to join us. It's fun for me, and I appreciate your support. And I'm going to end it, and join me next month. It's only 3 weeks from today at 10:30. And you will be amazed about what life was here for Elmira Hancock. Thank you for Holmes County had a lower, this is from David. He said that in Holmes County, Ohio, which is heavily Amish, the state did not keep track and had one of the lowest COVID rates in the state. And you know what? I didn't look any other place than Sarasota because that was the area I was speaking about, but that was really helpful to know. And I did look up about Lancaster as far as and as I said, it varies by district, by type of Amish, and a lot will use doctors, but a lot also don't. And so Holmes County could be entirely different. And I didn't look to see if Lancaster or Holmes County got a higher rate of COVID. So I appreciate you letting me know that from David. So that is really helpful. Can I tell you that Amish are some of the people I admire most in the world. I go visit Gettysburg because I'm very interested in Civil War. We travel 1.5 miles across the state. A lot of people go to Lancaster because the Amish are there. I try not to intrude on them, but I haven't gotten to Holmes County, Ohio, and I hope to. but those are great areas to visit. And I like to support Amish-owned businesses because you can go out into the country and maybe buy a quilt or something else. But I would never intrude as far as taking pictures of them. But there are touristy areas there as well. Thank you for everybody for your feedback. And I thank you for sharing this time with us. And please join me next week, next month, because I think it's going to be a great presentation. And Elmira Hancock is the only woman inside that fort during the Seminole Wars. And that's the same fort that'll be used during the Civil War. And then we'll be able to also talk about Winfield Scott Hancock in Gettysburg and Elmira Hancock and the friendship between a Union general and a Confederate general. I promise you don't want to miss it, not because I'm doing it, but because it's interesting. Thank you all, and I'll see you. I will keep doing these. If you're joining them, I think I had about 16, 18 people today. I will do them. Thanks so much. See you next month. Bye-bye.